Welcome to the Political Goat. I'm your host, Uncle Felix. Thanks for joining me today. Sorry about last week. There was actually a death in the family, um, and I couldn't come on here. But anyway, thanks for coming back this week here. We should have some fun today. We're going to discuss a few topics. Uh, Mainly, I really want to talk about this whole critical race theory thing and how it's going mainstream, which is kind of scary. We're also going to touch on the Mayweather fight this past weekend. I don't know about how you feel about it. I know I got robbed. I got robbed for $50, that's for sure. And we're also going to talk about Kamala Harris, her trip down to Guatemala. And to help me do all that is going to be my main man, Chris, all the way down from Arizona. He will be joining me to discuss this and much, much more. But before we get into that, I'm going to pause for our sponsor.
Pharmaceutical company Prevacus says their new concussion medication Prevacol helps repair nerves and promote cell growth.
We can get the drug in the brain in less than 5 minutes. And our plan is when we get that diagnosis on the field of play, give the drug nasally, get it in the brain quickly. When it gets in the brain, it actually gets into the nucleus of your brain cells, and it reduces swelling, inflammation, and oxidative stress at the same time.
When Jake and I first talked about this many years ago, one of my first questions was, will this help me? And he goes, no, this is for treatment immediately when a concussion or you think a concussion has occurred.
Yeah.
The acute problems that exist later on in life, if we can take care of these at an early age and start getting some of these things to our children and grandchildren, and I think we can make this game, our game, football, a safer place.
And so the whole goal is we're trying to make the game safer. And so Odyssey and this drug, we believe, can be a game changer in so many different ways. Yes, on the football field, in the game of football, because that's where my passion lies, but also in the game of life.
We're back. And as promised, I'm going to bring on my man, Chris. Give me one moment. Chris, how's it going, buddy?
What's going on, Uncle Felix?
Nephew Chris, huh?
Wow, you know what, man? I keep trying to change it up every week, and I realize if I keep calling you Uncle Felix, then I must be a nephew.
It's funny, I'm always looking forward to see what you come up with.
Yeah, well, listen, I just wanted to start by saying I apologize. Well, because I was born white and you weren't, so therefore I have something to apologize for. I just wanted to throw that out there because I feel bad if we don't clear the air with that.
Yeah, we definitely got to talk about that because according to Joe Biden, you and your people are causing a lot of trouble.
Yeah, we're the biggest threat to the U.S. homeland. It's pretty sick, actually. It's it's a major thing. Me and the opera singer that was arrested at the Capitol riots, apparently, that speaks volumes to the armed insurrection. She was armed with vocal cords that could, strike and break glass. That's how they got in.
I mean, it's getting scary. Like when critical race theory first came out, I was hoping it was just something with the far left, the fringe thing, and this and that. But now it's getting into our schools. The federal government is implementing. The Army is actually teaching this now. And they're all being emboldened, of course, by Joe Biden's recent comments where he says, and here's the quote here, terrorism from white supremacy, the most lethal threat to the homeland. I've never heard something so radical being uttered by the president of the United States. And it's such a double standard because if he came out and said any other race supremacy after that, and accuse any other race of being the biggest threat to the American homeland, we would never hear the end of it. But for some reason, it's open game on you and your people, Chris.
Yeah, well, you know what, and probably deservedly so. We're a bunch of real, and I usually don't try to speak for the rest of the white population, but we're monsters. terrible human beings. We're basically, I mean, we're born just horrible. It goes even beyond original sin. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to, and this is where it gets scary. I wish I would have copied the quote down, but it was I believe a Yale or a Harvard professor, and she was giving a speech on the whole thing, and she was literally saying, just what you're saying. Obviously, you're kidding around, but she was just about how white people, there's no cure for the whiteness, or that they're just prone to violence. And I mean, she went on and on and on, and my jaw was just dropped. I'm like, how is this being accepted? Like, how are people buying into this?
You know what it is, Felix, and I think it's a combination of things, right? And I don't. To your earlier point, you said when this first started getting talked about, you thought it would be thrown out as a fringe idea. And when it first came out, what, 40 years ago, it was thrown out as a weird fringe idea. Like, it wasn't something that was considered accepted or part of the new norm. It was just, no, it was considered a weird, bullshit theory that was tossed out and kind of ridiculed as some leftist propaganda. But now, for some reason, the landscape has changed so much that it is becoming more mainstream, and the fact that you find a lot of these red jurisdictions that are trying to pass laws to prevent it from being part of the curriculum, it just is just going to further deepen this divide that we see in the country. Rather than do what it should be trying to do, which is bring everyone together, they just keep making it harder and harder to want to work across the aisle. It just, you can have fundamental difference of beliefs, but this is some serious shit.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me almost of, like we talked the other week about the Palestine and Israel conflict there, and how, that's never going to be resolved because one side feels that the other side shouldn't even exist. And that's what we get here with the critical race theory. You know what I mean? They're basically saying white people are irredeemable. You know what I mean? So,
well, so again, do you mind if I read something? Because I always like to read something. This is the source on this is the Britannica. So hopefully it's somewhat authoritative, but it describes critical race theory. And in the kind of the third paragraph down, it just says critical race theorists hold that the law and legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, especially African Americans. So using that definition, I almost want to argue to some extent that they might be right. The problem is that after the Civil Rights Act was passed, the only time you see the law favoring a particular race over another is laws that are favoring and giving preference to minorities. So if you wanted to say that the law as it's currently written is inherently racist, well, wouldn't it be racist in favor of the Black community in laws favoring minorities? Even Joe Biden, later on in the same speech, he mentioned about us being the greatest threat to the homeland, which, by the way, I had no idea I was that scary. Apparently I am, me and the opera singer and the guy with the horns. We're all evil people. But the general gist here is that he talked about streamlining or making it so that minority-owned business groups would get preferential treatment in government contracts.
Mm-hmm.
That's discrimination by definition. It is preferential discrimination. And discriminating against every other competitor in favor of someone who's a minority business.
And I believe the Supreme Court recently struck that down because it was brought to the Supreme Court. Because I mean, when he first announced that, I remember talking about it on the show. Like that was absurd. Like, how are you going to discriminate white people? Like, and I don't know. Like, I'm speechless about. Like, I'm still stunned that we are even discussing this.
So am I. The other thing that I thought was interesting is this was mentioned by him in the same, I don't know, in a short-term time frame as the Uber decision, where Uber was sued for giving discounts or preferences to black-owned businesses.
Oh, jeez.
And it was considered discriminatory, and therefore they lost the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was either Uber Eats or one of those platforms. It could have been Grubhub. I honestly, dude, I'd have to look it up. I just remembered hearing about the
It is.
lawsuits.
As a matter of fact, I do use Uber Eats, and they actually have a section. Haven't used it in a while, so I'm not sure if that section is still there. But they do have a section where it says black-owned businesses.
Look, if they want to have that, I don't care about that. But certainly don't give preference. And to me, don't discriminate and make it more or less affordable for one group than another.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's just outright discrimination. Make it fair. You want to give them a headline, fine. I mean, that's okay.
Even that though I find to be nonsense. You know what I mean? Like why would I care who's making my food? You know what I mean? Or race or race, not even making the food. Who owns the company? You know what I mean?
To that extent, I'm gonna challenge you on one thing. If I had to get a bowl of caldo verde, I am not gonna go to a white dude. Right. So to that extent, I want to know the minority-owned businesses, because if I want some real ass food, I want to make sure that I'm getting it from the right source.
But I
don't want, like Guy Fieri trying to make up my red beans and rice. Like that ain't happening. You know what I mean? Like I
know what you mean, but even then, I'm gonna counter that, right? Because it doesn't matter who owns the business; it's who's working in the kitchen. You know what I mean? Because it could be Joe Schmo who owns the company, but he's got the right people in the in the kitchen, making the food. But it's just more nonsense. I mean, Netflix has a section too of black movies.
Well, I told you about to go back to our comment from last time we were on together. I mentioned the Disney Plus, black stories, and it was The Lion King, and I'm like, it's the most racist shit I've seen. Because literally, there's not a single black character; they're all animals. And that's to say, like, how many black Americans have never even looked at Africa on a map? Never mind try to make that connection. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
And if someone tries to argue that's because James Earl Jones did Mufasa's voice, I'm gonna be like, yeah, you know what? He also did freaking Darth Vader, so therefore, Star Wars is now a black movie.
Yeah. Leading black character, Darth Vader, unbelievable.
Oh, dude.
I mean, I'm looking forward to when this is out of the news, but it doesn't look like it's going anywhere soon. The only, the bright spots that we are seeing is that there are states standing up to it. They're trying to ban it. I believe we're up to about a dozen states now who've actually banned it completely, and even more counties and towns, looking to ban it from their curriculum, their school curriculum. Because
I think Arizona passed it. If not, it's in the legislature.
Yeah, I mean, because this is just poison being taught to the kids. And my whole thing is, like, even if you are black, right? Like, why would you want basically they're teaching you that you're inferior to the white race, right? That white people have the edge on everything. You're a victim, and nothing can be done for you unless it's done by the white people, unless we correct it. You know what I mean? The even playing field is gone, is basically what they're saying. And on top of all that, it's a smack in the face to all the civil rights leaders that gave up their lives, for their cause and, for this country to better itself, you know what I mean, from the Civil War, through the civil rights movement in the 60s. It's a slap in the face to all of them. So we're basically saying none of that matters. You know what I mean? White supremacy is just reigning supreme now in America.
And it seems ironic to me. Now, to some extent, I will say, going backwards, were there laws that were written inherently to protect, and preserve one race over another? I mean, realistically speaking, I'll tell you what, I really don't know. I know at the time, all the people that wrote the laws were certainly white dudes.
Mm-hmm.
So were they necessarily looking out for their own self-interest when they wrote them? Were they trying to look out for their neighbors, their colleagues, their counterparts? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think for 1 second they were thinking, how does this help everyone equally? However, after they struck a lot of that out of the existing laws that might have deterred or discriminated against another particular race or subgroup, those laws were pretty much rewritten to avoid that color language. And as a result, I don't think they're in there anymore. So it may have been written that way, but it's certainly not that way now.
There's definitely progress has been made. I mean, to believe that no progress has been made since slavery's ended is just nonsense. And I always point to Frederick Douglass, and Martin Luther King. They both pointed to the Constitution as their guide, for civil rights. You know what I mean? So, and that Constitution was written by you evil white people, Chris.
Yeah, right. Yep. There were we did a lot of, like I said. Now, again, though, you do have to acknowledge that as a society, whether it's a country, did we do some evil shit? Yeah, we did. But so did every other country, every other group since the dawn of time. I mean, literally since society has been formed, there's been some sort of slavery, or there's been the victors of wars. There's been, overthrowing governments. There's been pushing out of indigenous peoples. There's been evil shit happening since the dawn of man.
Of course, and I tell people all the time, they say, "Oh, you're on stolen land." Show me the country that didn't start off, you know what I mean, without a war. You know what I mean? Somebody won, and they got their way. That's how every country pretty much started.
I mean, it doesn't take much to read into like the early Western Civ that everyone's supposed to learn in schools to realize, oh yeah, Alexander the Great. There's a reason he conquered half of Europe. The Romans did the same thing and expanded the territory. We learned about the Egyptian history and what they did, and there's never been a history where there hasn't been some sort of overtaking of somebody. And when there's a loser of a battle or a war, whether it was truly a war or just a overthrowing, it's not going to be a pleasant on the other side of the history.
No, exactly.
The victor goes to spoil. But you do have to look at it and go, all right, they're not doing that now. As a people, as a whole, we've evolved from that. Mm-hmm. To keep dwelling in the keep slapping us on the wrist for all the bad that was done 200 years ago. It just seems at this point we've got to get beyond it, or you're never going to be able to succeed. If you're constantly sitting there talking about, hey, I'm a victim, I can't get ahead. Well then, but why? What law is preventing you from being successful now?
Exactly.
Point it to me. Hey, listen, if there's one on the books, I'll be the first one standing next to you with a picket sign. Let's do it. But someone's got to show me something other than I was born into this situation. Well, shit, so was I. You know what I mean? So was a lot of people. But they if you want to get out of it, you got to work your way out of it. Like this, you got to use the system that exists.
Exactly.
Because I just don't see anywhere now where the system could potentially hold you back. Do I think we need to increase our history to incorporate some of the things like I think I mentioned this before, like that Tulsa massacre? I think that should be taught in history. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the civil rights that gets kind of glossed over in some aspects should be a little bit better highlighted to explain that, yeah, you know what? It wasn't just the slavery. It was more. It was what happened after. It wasn't like Lincoln came out and everyone said, yeah, we're all friends. Let's hug it out. Like it wasn't like it, bullshit. That was not like that. But if we're going to teach the history, let's also teach it the right way. And, let's make it so that everyone knows that the Democratic Party is the one who founded the KKK. Like, can we actually, if we're going to teach history, can we actually teach history and stop with the bullshit? Because I think if we're going to do it, let's do it. Let's teach it historically accurate.
Believe it or not, I was speaking with somebody not that long ago, and we were, debating back and forth on Facebook, and they didn't believe me when I told them Abraham Lincoln was a Republican president. You know what I mean? Like that's how. I mean that. Our school system obviously failed that person.
It's failed a lot of people.
Yeah, true. Hey, with that being said, I got to take a pause for our sponsor. But before I do that, Chris, I'm going to have to ask you to put your hands where I can see them because you people can't be trusted. Thank you.
Pharmaceutical company Prevacus says their new concussion medication Prevacol helps repair nerves and promote cell growth.
We can get the drug in the brain in less than 5 minutes. And our plan is when we get that diagnosis on the field of play, give the drug nasally, get it in the brain quickly. When it gets in the brain, it actually gets into the nucleus of your brain cells, and it reduces swelling, inflammation, and oxidative stress at the same time.
When Jake and I first talked about this many years ago, one of my first questions was, will this help me? And he goes, no, this is for treatment immediately when a concussion or you think a concussion has occurred.
Yeah.
The acute problems that exist later on in life, if we can take care of these at an early age and start getting some of these things to our children and grandchildren, and I think we can make this game, our game, football, a safer place.
And so the whole goal is we're trying to make the game safer. And so Odyssey and this drug, we believe, can be a game changer in so many different ways. Yes, on the football field, in the game of football, because that's where my passion lies, but also in the game of life.
And we're back. And speaking of people we can't trust, I don't know if you got to watch the fight over this weekend, the Mayweather Paul fight. I was all excited about it. I threw down my $49.99, and I was absolutely robbed. For those of you that didn't see the fight or don't know about the fight, obviously Floyd Mayweather, pound for pound, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Yeah, he's 44 years old, and he was pitted to fight Paul, Logan Paul, who's a YouTuber, and I give credit to both these guys. They're both great self-promoters. You know what I mean? Logan Paul and Mayweather, to a certain extent, they've made their money because of their mouth. You know what I mean? And so, kudos to them on that. But I was hoping to see a fight, and it was literally what I guess it literally was what it was, an exhibition fight. Like, you could see Mayweather was not looking to get hurt at all. He stayed away. He flexed his muscle here and there just to show people that, yeah, look, I could take this guy out whenever I want. But then he just let the guy coast with him for 8 rounds. It was just boring.
Look, I think at the end of the day, there were a couple takeaways from that event, and one of them was, I always knew Mayweather had a good mouthpiece and a self-promoter, and I definitely think Logan Paul did too. Mayweather, by far, one of the best defensive boxers I've ever seen. I think we ever will see. I had no idea that either one of them was such incredible actors, because that's what that was. That was a stage show. That was a performance art. That was about as fake as the WWE. Although I think with the WWE, people could still potentially get hurt, and I don't see that ever happening in that fight. I think it was a joke. I don't know, man.
The joke was on me. I want my $50 back.
Yeah, to some extent, I almost think that I'm almost surprised Mayweather didn't take a fall just to rig his own betting odds. Again, I hate to even suggest that. But it was definitely a show. It was not a fight. On the other hand, I feel bad I missed it, but I watched clips. The Chad Johnson, or AKA Ocho Cinco fight, was freaking awesome.
And guess what? I missed that one. That's the only fight I missed. I came in and that fight had just ended. I didn't even know about it until after the event. And I was like, wait, Chad Ocho Cinco fought? And apparently, it's funny because the article I saw showed him on the canvas, so I thought, wow, he got his ass kicked. But then as I read the article and saw clips, he actually did very well.
Yeah.
He was getting all sorts of kudos and congratulations from like athletes all around all around the country on how well he did, and I was like, wow, hey, good for him. So
good. He clocked the guy a few times, man. I mean, it was. I was utterly impressed. Like I said, I didn't see the whole thing.
Yeah,
Saw the play-by-play, and then I started downloading clips. And from what I saw, he looked good. I mean, I was like, wow, that would have been worth the $49.99.
And of course, I missed it. So maybe we'll probably see him fight again. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Floyd actually promote these things. But I mean, he made he's set to make $50 million from this fight. Floyd made it. I mean, for literally shadow boxing for 8 rounds. And then even Logan Paul there, he's going to make $10 million from this thing. So the viewers are there for this. It's really interesting. It's like that whole celebrity death match boxing thing, which is it's kind of funny and it is entertaining though. I'm not going to lie. If I can find 2 celebrities I would like to see in the ring go at it with each other, I'd pay all day to watch it.
Look, it is a perfect match to start Pride Month. To watch 2 men like hug and dance around in a ring together and wearing nothing but boxers. Like I think, to me, that was a perfect start to Pride Month.
That's the only thing it was good for, though. Like I said, I'm the only person that got beat up that night was me and my wallet. That was it.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
That being said, I'm gonna take another pause for our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to talk about Kamala Harris's visit to Guatemala.
Pharmaceutical company Prevacus says their new concussion medication Prevacol helps repair nerves and promote cell growth.
We can get the drug in the brain in less than 5 minutes. And our plan is when we get that diagnosis on the field of play, give the drug nasally, get it in the brain quickly. When it gets in the brain, it actually gets into the nucleus of your brain cells, and it reduces swelling, inflammation, and oxidative stress at the same time.
When Jake and I first talked about this many years ago, one of my first questions was, will this help me? And he goes, no, this is for treatment immediately when a concussion or you think a concussion has occurred.
Yeah.
The acute problems that exist later on in life, if we can take care of these at an early age and start getting some of these things to our children and grandchildren, and I think we can make this our game, football, a safer place.
And so the whole goal is we're trying to make the game safer. And so Odyssey and this drug, we believe, can be a game changer in so many different ways. Yes, on the football field, in the game of football, because that's where my passion lies, but also in the game of life.
Yeah, we're back. One thing about that fight there with Mayweather and Paul, there was no Odyssey medication would be needed there. No fear of a concussion there, that's for sure. But hey, this trip of Kamala Harris had me dying when I saw how she was greeted when she rolled into Guatemala. She was greeted with a sign, Kamala, go home. Kamala, Trump won. There's another sign on the side there said, Kamala, mind your own business. I mean, absolutely hilarious. Obviously, these protesters were not happy with her visit there.
Yeah, she didn't get the warm welcome. I don't think that she had expected. I don't know if she expected it. So it's a combo.
But the funny thing, or the ironic thing about the trip, is I heard her speech. She actually gave a very good speech, and I agreed with everything she was saying in that speech. But her, the actions of her and the administration don't back up that speech at all. You know what I mean? Because she was out there and she was trying to be stern, and she was saying, do not make the dangerous trek up to the United States. You will be turned away. Yada yada yada. They will enforce the laws. The only problem is we're not turning anybody away, and we're not enforcing our laws. You know what I mean? So it's almost being said with a hey, wink, wink.
Yeah, I was going to say that that's exactly what you hear in the speech. is it's almost like, do not come to the U.S.
Yeah,
You're going to be turned away at the border.
yeah.
You know,
Which they're clearly not doing that. So I don't get it.
Yeah.
And she got called. She actually got called out today by Lester Holt. Actually, yesterday by Lester Holt, and who confronted her, and I was shocked and asked her, why haven't you been down to the border yet? And and she tried to play it off, and she came back and said, "Oh, we have been down to the border." And Lester was like, "What do you mean we? You haven't gone." And she goes, "Well, I haven't been going." She replied, "I haven't gone to Europe either. So what's your point?" I mean, she I mean, it was just total nonsense. Like I don't know. She obviously doesn't even believe her own bullshit. Like I don't get it.
Well, AOC even called her out. I mean,
Yeah.
you know it's bad. You know it's bad if AOC calls you out. Normally, it's like your biggest champion. Like that's bad.
I mean, well, it's just a mess. But I saw something today that said it's been 77 days since she's been appointed in charge of the border, and obviously she hasn't gone down to the border. I'm capping the over/under though at 85. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on her, especially after that confrontation with Lester Holt, to actually get down to the border and do something. I can't see them putting it off too much longer. I don't think they'll do it tomorrow because then it'll look like they're caving into the pressure. So I could see them giving it about a week or so, and then she'll, they'll announce that she's going down to the border. But the thing, they're trying to play along like there's no big deal, like nothing to see here down at the border. Meanwhile, we're breaking all sorts of records of people, coming through the border illegally. Like, I mean, and they're not polling well now with Latinos, because this is, believe it or not, a big issue with Latinos, and they are for securing the border, and I think that's one of the things that drove her to go to Guatemala, actually, because they're not polling well. Um, Among Latinos, especially in Texas. As a matter of fact, Republicans flipped a mayoral seat down in Texas in a very blue county, as a matter of fact, which is 85% Latino, and the Republican actually won that seat there. So I think things like that are going to cause them to, at least give the appearance anyway that they're gonna try to shore things up on the border.
Well, if the folks in Arizona ever get a chance to finish auditing the last election, I'm interested to see how the southern border area is now going to vote in light of everything, because they're the ones that are directly impacted by that. I mean, more so than I am. I don't really see it in my community, other than I know that they're staying in some of the hotels that have been kind of taken over to house some of the in process people that have applied for amnesty and they haven't been decided upon yet, keeping families together that way. But other than some of that, do you see, we haven't really noticed it at all. It hasn't really impacted our communities, but the border towns, it's impacting them a lot. It drain on resources, taxes, policing, and just the massive amounts of people and resources that are being dedicated to the border. I'm interested to see how they're going to vote. Do they still want the Democratic machine that wants these open borders, or are they going to say, "Oh shit, that was probably a bad idea"? It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it definitely will. Speaking about the audit, how is that going over there in Arizona?
I think the last time I checked, they were looking for chicken blood stains because apparently there was a voodoo wizard in one of the communities that had sacrificed chickens to try to convert the ballots from Donald Trump to Biden, and now they're looking for stains to prove that this ritual sacrifice took place. And by the way, no, that is not true. But I would not have been surprised had I learned that was part of the audit.
And I was just gonna say the same thing. I gotta ask you, is this true? The sad thing is, I wouldn't have been surprised if you said yes.
Well, I read about this, and the funny part is, listen, I have a lot of respect for Senate President Fan, who's running the show at our legislature, but reading some of her emails where she flip flops like her defense of this. Like she'll tell the pro Trumpers we're doing this to gain back the win, telling other people we're trying to secure our vote, telling other people. Deep down inside, I think she's much more of a reasonable, moderate person, just trying to hold the vastly different, everything from the uber crazy, QAnon right to the more moderate middle of the ground, and then trying to appease everyone. So she's talking out of like 8 sides to her mouth. And it's hysterical watching and reading some of the emails that were released to the public. But the whole thing is just, I mean, even the selection of this particular group, I mean, come on. Like, you couldn't have found a more ridiculously absurd group to start doing this on. So woefully unprepared. It's a joke. Unfortunately, it really is a joke.
It's politicians in general. It's kind of sad. You know, they can't utter a word without looking at a poll. You know what I mean? In order to see how people are thinking on certain topics. They're so scared just to speak their own minds. And, you know, there's too many like that. And it's unfortunate.
I would have been much happier if they had said, look, we're going to do, a recheck, but really just based on we're going to take a look at all the mail-in ballots. Did any of the signatures look like they were not the same, or that they were machine printed, or anything like that? That could have given any credence to the, these weren't legit ballots. Okay, fine. You want to do that audit? I think that makes sense. It'll make people sleep better at night knowing that it wasn't stolen. You're almost at that point giving more credibility to the Democrats saying the fraud never existed.
Well, yeah,
really evident, and that's fine. If you want to have that, I don't think it was necessary, but fine. If you want to go through that motion, let's do it. But this whole, like, we're looking for bamboo in the ballots. I mean, the fact that they're looking for bamboo in it is just in and of itself racist. They don't make paper from bamboo. Come on, man. That's the dumbest shit I've heard. I'm looking at soy sauce stains on them. I mean, come on. Like, this is ridiculous. It smells like a D10.
My issue, and I think you know this, my issue from the beginning isn't really about the ballots themselves. It's about the laws that were changed before the voting occurred. Those are the things that really need to be looked at, because the states that changed their laws did not do so properly. They did not go through the state legislators to do it, and that's where the problem is. This other stuff, I'm less concerned with this other stuff.
I don't even think Arizona changed any of its laws for this.
Yeah, which is why I'm not really, I don't want to say interested, but I'm not really focused on Arizona.
Yeah,
I would rather be talking about Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia, to be honest with you, because those them and some other states had their laws changed over the summertime. Because I remember following that and doing some shows about that, and that's where the problem really lies. But we'll see. We'll see how this whole Arizona thing plays out, and we'll see if other states follow.
I got to tell you, can you do me a favor though before we get off that topic? Can you, in your capacity as a actual bona fide Republican, can you award like Kristen Sinema an honorary Republican award for us? Like, because I got to tell you, man, for a Democratic senator, she can definitely vote. Not necessarily along the party lines. I mean, does a pretty good job for us.
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with her voting positions in the past, but I wish more people would do that. Like, we have too much partisanship here in this country right now. Like, too many people need to see what everybody else is doing. Just do what's right for you and your constituents. The end. But that's it's too much to ask apparently.
Well, she's an advocate to keep the filibuster.
Yeah. So is what's his name there, Manchin?
Yeah.
Which is huge. I mean, this whole thing should be disturbing, I guess, to people. Like, the threat to remove the filibuster, the threat to pack the Supreme Court, the threat to add, DC in Puerto Rico and states. I mean, these things are ridiculous, and they're only being done obviously to slant everything one way, and that should be frowned upon. Um, like I'm surprised that doesn't turn people off more than I think it should.
Because nobody cares unless it comes out of Trump's mouth. I think if he started going out there tomorrow and started saying we should get rid of the filibuster rule and talking about how we should be bringing Puerto Rico on as a state, people would be dead set against it. And that's, if you ever want it, honest to God, that's all you got to do. Just send Trump out and have him parrot everything Biden says, and then nothing would ever get done because people would be so upset that Trump said it that they'll never support it.
This is true. This is true. I mean, I've never seen somebody so polarizing in my life. At the same time, though, I was talking to some people about this. Like, I'm obviously a big Trump fan. I wasn't at first. I was a Ted Cruz guy. I was one of those people who thought, Trump's a buffoon. He's running more for ego, which I still believe the ego played a big part in it. Don't get me wrong, but I was extremely pleased with his policies early on, and I actually liked the way he carried himself. And anyway, I bought into what he was selling, but he's also a cult of personality, if you will. You know what I mean? Like people will follow him and won't care basically what he's saying as long as he is saying something. You know what I mean? I'll see people who change their opinion at the drop of a dime because Trump said so, and we have to be careful with that whole cult of personality thing. I'm a constitutional conservative. The movement has been here before Trump. It'll be here after Trump. We gotta remember that it's not, right now he's a good tool to push that forward because he's proven that to me in the 4 years he was in office. He pushed through a lot of conservative policies and promoted a lot of conservative values. So I'm all for that. But we can't lose sight of the movement for a person. You know what I mean? We got to be careful not to lift him up so high to the point where we're idolizing him. You know what I mean? He's not a god.
Yeah, no, not at all. And like I said, my thoughts on him. I didn't vote for him the first time around. I thought he was an asshole. Still think he's an asshole. I like the job he did. I give him a lot of credence for the job performance. As a result, I did vote for him for the second term. I did like his results, but I just couldn't stand the guy. I literally just couldn't stand him. But if he never talked and never tweeted, and all he ever did was just execute behind the scenes and was a silent manager, I would have been fine with that. And as much as I didn't care for his DP, he could have just been the voice box, kind of a chuckle here and there, and just presented everything that he wanted to do and kind of be the voice box for Trump while Trump stayed in a hovel and did his thing. But
unfortunately, I think what made Trump great is also what made people hate him because, like I said, he's so polarizing. I liked the way he fought back with media. I think we needed somebody like that in office because I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's another person on the planet who would have been able to put up with what he went through in regards to the media. I love that he gave it right back to them. And I think we can learn from that. I think he exposed a lot of things too, because no longer is the media even pretending to be to be impartial. You know what I mean? They're full out now, on their agenda. And I think we do have Trump to thank for that.
But I think if you took someone like that could argue in a logical in a true polished, educated, or intellectual fashion, it would have been better served. I think I liked the idea he fought back. I liked his kind of, willingness to give it out and to call bullshit when he sees it. But if he could have delivered it a little bit better, delivered it like a Shapiro would have delivered it, rather than the
I love Shapiro.
Whatever the fuck he was doing, like the guy was an ass.
Yeah, I love Shapiro, and like I said, I love Ted Cruz, and I love right now I'm loving Ron DeSantis. But I think both Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis have become more emboldened because of a Donald Trump. You know what I mean? I think Donald Trump has shown them, look, if you take on the media, it's not going to hurt you. And I think we needed him to show these guys that they can do it. Now, I do believe Cruz and DeSantis, I believe they can take on the media in a more articulate way, you know what I mean, than Trump.
To some extent, I think you have a point, but I also say that reminds me of like the beat up Pinto next to the Corolla. At first, when you just saw the Corolla as one of your options, you're like, it seems like a reasonably solid car, but I wouldn't go and like get excited over it. But after 4 years of driving around in a Pinto, the Corolla looks fucking amazing. So to that extent, you've been driving for 4 years in a Pinto, and now Ted Cruz's Corolla looks fucking impressive. Like, I think it all is a matter of perspective. I just think that, like, again, if Trump had come across and just even, I'm not asking him to be a Porsche, I'm just saying, like, you know, if you're going to use the car analogy, all he had to do is not be a shitbox Pinto. Like, he just be, I don't know, a standard like little sedan or an SUV, like a little family-friendly car, but you know, still have the same edge.
I think no matter what he did, the media had it out for him. I mean, every time he said something, they pounced on it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like, if he was nicer, would they have backed off? No, they were going for his throat right from the beginning. You know what I mean?
I don't even want him to be nicer. I just want him to be articulate.
Yeah.
Like, to have a well thought out statement.
That's not him. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
My analogy would be like Shaquille O'Neal, right? You got to take the goat to bat, dominant, beast on the boards, beast scoring points. But he just can't fucking hit a free throw. You know what I mean? Same thing with Trump.
I will say, I would vote
policies. You know what I mean?
would vote Shaq all day long.
Huh?
I would vote Shaq all day long.
I like Shaq.
He's nuts.
And I like Shaq.
I've been listening to him after all these Phoenix Suns games. Cheer out to the Phoenix Suns. Winning, that's all that matters. But I've been watching the post game and like the half game, like series in between the periods, and Shaq is out of his mind. Like, legitimately, he has great like game read. You know, he can read the game, he can talk about it, but he's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his off kilter shit. And I'm just like, if there was one dude I just wish I could be friends with and hang out with, it would be Shaq. Just because I don't think his commercials are that far off from who he really is.
I was just gonna say, I don't think he's bullshitting anybody. Like, he's saying what he really believes, and he's having fun doing it. You know what I mean? I envy the guy for that. I mean, he's living his best life. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, it's hysterical.
That being said, Chris, it's time for me to cut this show. And thank you for coming on.
Always a pleasure.
We'll be doing this again really soon, maybe even next week.
I'm still waiting for my honorary co-host T-shirt.
Well, you know what? It's coming soon. You know what I mean? Because I love the rapport we have, the back and forth. It's awesome. You know what I mean? And it makes everything go much smoother. That's for sure.
Cool, man. Well, listen, you know I always love coming and joining you on the show. Have fun.
Very good, very good. Well, thanks for joining us, folks. I'm going to end the show with another quick message from our sponsor, and we will be back next week to see what craziness has gone on in the United States. We'll see. Tune in. Pharmaceutical company Prevacus says their new concussion medication Prevacol helps repair nerves and promote cell growth.
We can get the drug in the brain in less than 5 minutes. And our plan is, when we get that diagnosis on the field of play, give the drug nasally, get it in the brain quickly. When it gets in the brain, it actually gets into the nucleus of your brain cells, and it reduces swelling, inflammation, and oxidative stress at the same time.
When Jake and I first talked about this many years ago, one of my first questions was, will this help me? And he goes, no, this is for treatment immediately when a concussion or you think a concussion has occurred.
Yeah. The acute problems that exist later on in life, if we can take care of these at an early age and start getting some of these things to our children and grandchildren, and I think we can make this game, our game, football, a safer place.
And so the whole goal is we're trying to make the game safer. And so Odyssey and this drug, we believe, can be a game changer in so many different ways. Yes, on the football field, in the game of football, because that's where my passion lies, but also in the game of life.